Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good ever what time of day it happens to be that you are listening to the Tattoo Teacher podcast. My guest tonight is Paul Miles. Now, Paul is the Managing Director, CEO of the Busy Group. Now, I could say so much about it, but I'm going to leave a lot of that to you. But a little bit about Paul. You're a lawyer, you're an accountant, you're a managing director, you're in the not-for-profit space. That's a crazy journey already, but welcome to the show.
Thank you, mate. No, I love what I do, and I not so much a lawyer. I did a law degree, and then decided accounting was far more exciting, and then decided I was wrong about both. So, doing other stuff now. Thankfully, sorry to the accountants at Busy, but yeah, I tried.
Everyone's got their passion that they're good at and that they love doing. But you're running the Busy Group, okay, which encompasses so much, and hopefully we'll get onto some of the arms of that. But the main thing that I know about Busy is the Busy School. So how did you end up in an education space with your background?
It's funny. Busy's been around for 50 years, and we run a whole range of government services in employability and skills. But we always felt that there was this gap, and we wanted to look at this education space for a long time where we felt young people are coming out of school and not having the skills to go into employment. And also recognizing that over the last, particularly since COVID, but even before that, more and more young people are not finishing education. So we wanted to create a model that might help young people finish education. Well, simultaneously, we're supporting kids who are disengaged. And then the outcome being, let's get into real jobs, apprenticeships, and build them for life so that we don't end up helping them later on in life when, they come into our employment programs. The idea being they avoid all our other programs for the rest of their lives because we can help set them up at the right time now before they finish school.
Yeah, so it's a proactive approach to help often disengaged young people to get to their next level of success, or to give them a foothold somewhere so that they can build skills, confidence, to move forward in their life where a lot of the chips were stacked against them.
Absolutely, mate. And look, we are year 11 and 12 at the moment. We're going to be moving down into younger years soon. We really want to try and catch young people before they disengage. A lot of the young people that work with us now, they've either already disengaged or they're very close to. So the idea being is, we get you back into school, we help you finish your Queensland certificate education, or, we also have schools in New Zealand and soon Canada in the UK, whatever the local qualification is. But here in Queensland, and probably, Victoria and New South Wales and Tasmania as they open up, you finish your certificate education. We align that with vocational education as part of that certificate. So, here in Queensland, if you do a school-based apprenticeship, you get 8 points towards your QCE. So we your education, you finish a school-based apprenticeship, and then at the same time, we're supporting you with a whole range of wraparound supports to deal with whatever difficulty or trauma that led to your disengagement in the first place, which sadly for our kids, there's a whole range of very personal and quite difficult situations.
Yeah, because being a teacher myself and for almost 25 years now,
You don't look it,
a
mate.
lot.
I believe you.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate that. You're too kind. But with disengagement, I know, and we see a lot of the disengagement around the sort of year 9, so 14, 15 year mark. And sort of they either just completely rebel and ditch school, or the parents think they're going, or they're playing up and they're doing all these things. And then they miss a few of those key things once they get that little bit of maturity, but they've missed too much. So it seems that they fall even further into the cracks, and against a lot of a lot of challenges come against them, which stop them moving forward. Even though they've got the passion and the drive to, they just can't do it. So Busy sort of helps circumvent that.
Yeah, we've got a rolling enrollment and quite intensive supports. The idea being that, wherever you are, and we literally have, young people that are coming to us um, having only completed maybe year 3 or 4. So a lot of the kids, you're right, have been disengaged for many years. Some of them not so much, some are about to disengage, but we have this rolling enrollment, and we have supports, individualized supports that actually helping you with language, literacy, numeracy. We really try hard, and we're sitting, I think, 87%. I'd have to check the numbers on people who actually finish their QCE. And for us, if you have a young person who's significant language, literacy, numeracy coming into our schools, the goal for us is how can we really improve their language, literacy, numeracy? How can we get them into a job, hopefully an apprenticeship, but even just a job so that when they finish school, that's their outcome. It's not always an education outcome. We work really hard to make sure it is. And for young people who often come to our school with those language literacy issues, if we get into a job so they're not coming back to their own life and they can progress through their work, then that's a fantastic outcome.
Yeah, so you must have a special bunch of people working there. So obviously you've got educators, but you must have a whole range of other support members. Like you've got, I noticed on one of the things you provide meals for these guys. So you've got kitchen staff that provide a healthy meal, and that might be their only meal for the day. I'm assuming you work with allied health as well to help these young kids.
Yeah, we're really trying to break down every barrier, So uniforms, we provide uniforms, which for our kids, it's just, the busy t shirts with the logo, make sure they all feel like they belong to something. And if they rock up without a busy t shirt, we don't make a big drama. We give them one on reception, they can give us back at the end of the day. And then, yeah, we provide food. We're not talking, caviar and lobster. We're famous ham and cheese toasties. But we do try to provide food. We're actually trying to look at how we can provide additional food because increasingly in this current economic situation, we are finding food insecurity is becoming worse and worse for a lot of our kids and their broader families. So we absolutely do provide food. We provide uniforms, and then we have just honestly the most amazing staff, right from the directors of our schools, our principals, and then we have incredible teachers, teachers aides, youth workers, psychologists, counselors, vocational education specialists. We have teams that only work on trying to get you a job, career and placement advisors, So we have this amazing wraparound supports that are really trying to get those outcomes. And you know this, mate. A lot of these kids, they just need one adult they can trust. And so
Yeah.
sometimes that adult is a teacher, sometimes a teacher's aide, sometimes it's a youth worker, it's the employment professional that we have. So they can find one person they can trust, they can find some security, and then from there, different education, find a job, and sort of progress in life. But you're spot on. We really tried to break down all those barriers, but it really is driven by the most amazing group of individuals who are so passionate. And quite honestly, when with our teachers either go very quickly within a couple of weeks, or they stay for full years and years. It's only been 6 years now, and we've got teachers like Faith and who've been with us from the start. That are so passionate about these kids, and that's where so much of the success comes from. Just having the right teachers and staff. So we're so fortunate at Busy.
Yeah, it does take a special kind of person to work in that environment. Not so much the job, the education part of the job. It's the building the relationship part of the job because there'd be so much pushback from these young people because there's so many trust issues. I'm assuming so it takes a while to because they've been hurt or damaged or they've got a trauma response that they go, "Well, you're an adult. You're not a nice person. I don't care what you put on. You're not a nice person. I've had that before." So yeah, it would take a special person to just keep that consistency and that, hey, I get it, but we can work through this together and we'll get there.
And it's funny, I'll be, as always, overshare, me. We've recently got the Busy School Online has started. And one of the challenges with that, of course, is providing those sort of supports. We are really, it only started this year. We are trying to work out because of the nature of the children that come to our schools, how do you provide that trust and build those relationships that they would build, say, with the local teacher, the youth worker, the career advisor. We're still working through that. You're spot on. Having that person you can trust just absolutely makes this massive difference. And that comes from repetition, from seeing them on a regular basis, from those counseling sessions, those classes, whatever it might be, and just connecting over a period of time. That's where this comes from. So we don't see those sort of results in the first few months, but over the 2 years, the changes are happening quite staggering.
Yeah, and yeah, it must be so rewarding to see that kid who comes in who probably doesn't look up, probably has the hoodie over his eyes mostly and sits there, but then at the end, walks out, shoulders back, chin up, and just going, "Hey, I can get by now." So that must be a huge boost for the staff, and just to go, "Hey, I had a part of this," and not for them to go, "Look what I did," but it's just like I've had a part in this person's success story. Look at what they can actually accomplish now.
Mate,
So,
it's the the end of year graduations. We have these graduations and we really try to celebrate their success, right around the state, well, and Auckland, and elsewhere soon. We really do try to celebrate that. And I love it. You have those moments where, oh, I'm not crying, you're crying sort of moments, you know what I mean? Where you
Yep.
sort of, I always think of this one young mum who used to bring her child in, I think she was, 17 with a 1 year old, and she sort of put him with our receptionist while she did her exams. And she literally stood there, said, I finished my job because we were busy. And you hear these stories. And you're right. You see these young people that did take a long time to really sort of open up and have really struggled. And the outcomes that they're achieving and the smiles on their faces, it's wonderful. And as much as watching the kids, you watch the teachers at those events, you watch the youth workers and you watch how happy they are. Honestly, you see the teachers just having an absolute blast at these events. You're right, mate. It's incredibly rewarding. And, our hope is that, we are making that impact that means that they don't have to come into other programs like the ones that we run elsewhere in the company later on in their lives.
Yeah, and I'm sure you have to increase the budget for the end of year celebrations for the Kleenex rollout. So
Totally.
now we first met when you spoke at the TEDx event down at Burleigh Heads, which was fantastic. And now, not something you generally hear from someone who works within I guess what most people think is a trade school. You quoted Aristotle, and
And Jimmy Carr.
which and Jimmy Carr, but we'll focus on Aristotle for now. But you looked at, and the key point from that was looking at you're looking at we need to shift from the deficit to the strength based model. So for those who weren't at the TEDx event or haven't seen the talk on YouTube, how does that tie in? Like, what do you actually mean by moving from the deficit to the strength based?
Look, I think it's something that a lot of people talk about, and it's something we all sort of pretend to try and do, but it's very hard to achieve. But everybody has strengths. We famously tell young people when they come for career advice, what do you enjoy doing? And it's actually not about what you enjoy doing. It's actually about what are you really good at and how can we build on that? And classically, I gave the example of a young man up in North Queensland who had the most incredible skill, at youth justice around cars and all them. I joked about the fact that he'd stolen enough cars, but he's turned into a brilliant young mechanic. And so we had this incredible strength in that space where teachers identify everyone has those skills or strengths. And then, what Aristotle was talking about, if you apply those strengths in the service of others, then you find purpose and meaning in life. So it's not just about finishing education. It's actually, all of the data will tell you that if you're using personal strengths in your day-to-day life, in your day-to-day job, you are so much happier as a person, so much more fulfilled. And so it's actually about helping young people identify what am I good at as opposed to what do I like? And then how do I build on that in service of others to make a difference in the world and build meaning and purpose in my long-term career?
Yeah, because I guess I mean I was a bit of a rat bag student. I mean, might be a bit hard to imagine, but I was one of those, and I think from that, yeah, there were teachers who, yeah, definitely like the finger pointing, like the chipping away. You're always doing this, you're always doing that. But I had one or two that were you're a rat bag, but you've got something there. You've got potential. What do you? Let's look at what you can actually
They don't
do.
say you're a rat bag, you should become a teacher.
No, well, when I when I run into people, and if I haven't seen them for quite a few years now, and I go, "Yeah, I'm a teacher," they're like, "You're what?" And they're just like, How? Like you were the one who was causing chaos." And I think for that, it has actually helped me be a better teacher. I mean, I'm well removed from when I was in the classroom as a student now, but still remembering back to go, hold on, there were a couple of teachers who, regardless of my behavior, I was called out for it and I was reprimanded, and and rightly so. But every time I came back, it was like, all right, new beginning. Let's move forward. Let's try and work on. And I try and bring that into my teaching to go. I haven't forgotten about what you did last lesson, but I'm not going to hold it against you. But
Yeah.
if you do it again, I'm going to go, hey, what's going on? What's the barrier here? Why are we continuing on with that? So is that something that you guys have to deal with, and across, I guess, the arms of busy, that like trying to work out what those barriers are, because often the students or the young people, they can't actually articulate what what it is. So is part of the role of Busy to help those people move past that little obstacle or sometimes very big obstacle?
Big part of what we do, trying to identify, those strengths. We do have tech that we use to do that. We have a pretty cool career system, but it's also comes back to what we talked about earlier before. It's down to a lot of our teaching staff identifying and working with those employment placement advisors to actually identify what are your strengths and where can we help you progress to. But all of that stuff does take time. In the first sort of 3 to 6 months, we don't put a lot of people into apprenticeships, and they tend to come towards the end of year 11 and start of year 12, because it does take time to first of all break down a lot of the barriers, prepare people for work, but also, yeah, identify what you're good at, and then also um, prepare you to behave in the workplace. I suppose come back to what you're talking about is what's appropriate in a workplace.
Yeah, I guess it's a big thing because I mean, for me, one of the things as an educator is to school's not so much about who no one remembers content when you're in high school, so it's almost that throwaway like what do I need that for? It's like well, yeah, what do you need it for? But school is like, hey, we're teaching you how to learn, so that you go into any area and you have the skills to learn. Critical thinking, creative thinking, learning to evaluate, read a room, and to be valuable members because so many there's a lot of people out there who just go, "Well, I know everything. I can do everything, and you can't tell me what to do." And it's just like that must be and I find that really difficult because I was in the trades years ago, and I saw apprentices who just wouldn't listen. So as you must have some really strong relationships with vocational training groups, like with businesses, local businesses. So how do you develop those relationships?
So it's a couple of God, you raised some interesting points there. I'll answer the last part, and I'll come back to school being a place to learn. Look, so Busy's background is a lot of people that know us long term. You're around for 50 years. Most people like yourself know us, but we've been delivering apprenticeship programs for 30 odd years. We have relationships with thousands upon thousands of employers around Australia these days, who are working with us on the apprenticeship side, but now working with us on our school side, and because of that, we have a fantastic relationship with TAFE Queensland and a whole range of private RTOs around Australia. So it means that we do have those relationships, and a lot of the employability staff that work in our schools, so many of them have come out of the apprenticeship space within Busy or from services space within Busy. So we are able to connect them through those other relationships we have. We're very fortunate, I suppose, as a broader organisation that we can do that. But I do just want to pick up on that first piece, though. School is a place to learn, and I'm going to get a bit controversial here because I'm not an educator. I see our schools as really trying to make a bit of a cultural shift, which in many ways, we are combating traditional education. School is a place to learn, and we want our kids to always, live that, have that lifelong learning and carry on learning for life. But we also see very clearly our schools about preparing you for life after school. So we want you to leave with your education, but we also really want to prepare you for the workplace. And I think if you talk to most of those employers, that's the gap there is. It's kind of the famous boomer thing to say that young people really, don't know how to behave in the workplace. But there is a bit in that. They said it by my generation, our generation, and it's still safe. But I think what we're trying to do is kind of break that so that the young people leaving our schools not only have their education, but they're actually really ready to work. And that's kind of the differentiator is that schools aren't just there about education and learning. Schools are actually there to prepare you for the long term. And I've sat in, how do I say this? The previous government in the UK, I've sat in meeting rooms with their sort of senior advisors, with very posh people telling me that schools are not a place, employment schools are a place just to learn stuff, that's all they're for. Well, no, it's not the case.
No.
Maybe you're doing the classics and you're going to Eton and you're off to Oxford and Cambridge afterwards. But most of our kids, it's all about how do we prepare you for life so that you can really live a fulfilling life. Comes back to that strengths piece. And have a life, where you are employed and you are, productive. So for us, it's about two things. Yeah, well, three things actually. We call it educate, empower, employ. It's about finishing education, tackling whatever trauma it is that you're going through, but really preparing you for life and employment post school.
Yeah, a three-pronged approach is, you hear about those, but to actually see it in action would be phenomenal. And I mean, I'm all about, like, I love education, like, but I love the trades, I love the industry, and I love to have people go to their level of success, whatever that looks like, and like you said, some are for the high level universities, and, we need good doctors, we need good lawyers, we need, you know, good
Do
engineers.
we need lawyers? Anyway,
Well well,
ChatGPT.
there was a joke there, but I won't say it. I'll upset. But we need these. We need certain people in certain roles. But I think, especially in a country like Australia, we're a primary country. We're a primary industry. We've got so many natural resources. We've got so much ability for growth and for agriculture, for building, for alternate energies. We've got all this space, and it happened back in the 80s. I think it was the 80s, 70s, or 80s. We had to import all these tradesmen, mostly from the United Kingdom, but we had to bring all these people in because we forgot about our workers. So who's going to do this? And I see now there's a massive shortage of qualified tradesmen, and people are calling out for apprentices, but there's not enough supply for the demand.
Yes, I am always careful of how critical I am of government at this point, but we have a massive skill shortage in Australia. And, if you look at, most jobs, I think 60, 70% of jobs of the future want vocational education as opposed to higher education. So we desperately need young people to be going into the trades. And it's one of those things, actually, you notice it. I'm not complaining as an immigrant. I came here 20 years ago. So many more Australian trades than in the UK. It's a lot more white-collar work. So we have a significant skill shortage. We are at the point of going back to importing those skills when in fact it needs to be, it's always about balance. How do you get, the right migrants in with the right skills to support the company, but also then how do we really go about training young people so that they are fulfilling those skill shortages with strengths? It's a fine balance, mate, but I am incredibly supportive of the need for additional investment in the apprenticeship space. What we're seeing in Canada and the UK, is we're seeing a rising youth unemployment. And over there, they're starting to replicate in Australia. Australia really reinvented the apprenticeship system in the 90s. And the last 30 years, we are, along with Germanic speaking countries, leaders in the world around apprenticeships, particularly school based apprenticeships. We have some of the highest population of school based apprenticeships in the world. And now what you're seeing is Mark Carney, big announcements, $6 billion in this space in the last couple of months. You're seeing Keir Starmer recognising the role of apprenticeships and youth unemployment and putting billions into it over there too. So often we miss the fact that apprenticeships have a dual relationship with skills and youth employability pathways. So I'm always supportive of more money in that space, and I am deeply, deeply concerned at the moment when you look at things like the housing crisis and the cost of living crisis. A massive part of that is because we simply don't have the skills to build what we need as a nation to move forward.
Yeah, and like I said before, I'm all for trades and apprentices. Like, I've got kids who go, "Oh, sir, I want to do this," and I'm just like, "Go do it!" Like, mum and dad want me to do this, and it's just a lot. Sometimes the challenge is breaking not the mindset of the kids, because they want to get out there and do it. It's changing the mindset of the parents who go, no, an apprentice is a very important role, and it will lead to success. Now, they might go to university later, they might stay in the trade, they might start their own business, they might do a whole range of things, but I know for me anyway, my apprenticeship, it set me up for the rest of my career. Like, I still look back at what I went through back then, and it gave me resilience because, you've got to learn how to work, and there's no excuses, and there's no one's going to do your job. You've got to learn how to interact with people. You got to learn how to cop um, some pretty harsh correction,
Yeah.
because money's on the line, and
Mm.
if you screw up, you're costing someone money somewhere. So, but the skills that I learned and the ability to go, well, you know what? If I work hard, I'm going to be rewarded. But if I work hard, I'm going to see myself the intrinsic reward of, look what I accomplished, look what I've done. And so I'm all for that. Like, let's get it done. So yeah, I
We, we,
love what's happening.
we still have this psychology around, you should go to university. And again, 60, 70% of the jobs are vocational skills. You and I are Gold Coasters. We live on the Gold Coast. And, you only have to go down and look at all the houses on the river, all the rich people with the jet skis and all the rest of it. They are all tradies. that have started off as an apprentice, and then they've decided, you know what, from my apprenticeship, I'm going to build a plumbing business, a construction business, or whatever it might be, electrical business. And tradies live incredible, not only just utilizing their skills, be incredibly wealthy through this too, if that's what it takes. So we really need to be pushing trades and alternative to university. And despite this ongoing mentality, it's not the right path for a lot of people. For so many people, it will offer them a happier, successful life than going through a university program.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, you're right. Like, I mean, I said to my wife like not too long ago, I said if I was 10 years younger, I'd be back and doing another trade. I've just tipped over the half ton, so I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm not going to go do a
Getting
4 year
it,
apprenticeship
right? Yeah,
as much as I'd love to. But it's that thing of like that it's there to be had. It's there, to, money is there to be made, and I think in any industry. But if you're willing to work hard, you will get success somewhere.
absolutely. And the trades are just like they can, like you say, they also teach you so much about life. They teach you so much about resilience, and it's just about business too. Actually, what people come back to your point that you recognize the value attached to the work that you do, and that's the business grounding you get by being a trader. It's something we don't really talk identify, but when you're trading on site, you are really starting to understand the value of materials, the value of labor, the value of time, um, and that's why so many tradies do create successful businesses.
Yeah, yeah, like I look at especially on the Northern Gold Coast where I am, um, yeah, every other house, and we're talking some quite valuable properties that these young guys who and a lot of them, it's all their own business. It's not the big companies that the youths are at the front of. It's their own little businesses that they started, that they've worked hard for. And I think unfortunately with some young people, I mean, I see it, quite often with some young people, they want that instant reward. They see what's on social media and they see the instant, man, I've got to get it straight away. Whereas we got to teach them the ability to go, okay, short term pain, long term gain. Like if you are willing to go through this, it will pay dividends beyond your wildest imaginations if you're willing to go that route.
I'm always nervous about sound like a boomer when we say these sort of things because I feel like this was said about our generation. Everybody wants things now. But I think the difference now is the data stacks up that because of the social media influencer type model, what is it like less than 0.5% of influencers or something stupid make any money out of it, so it's we see it and we see people being really wealthy because of social media when in fact, the vast majority of millionaires are over 45. And so much has it been related yet to long-term investment in whatever it might be that they're doing. So you're spot on, mate. And I think you're right. It's re-educating that the really sustainable pathways probably just take a little bit longer than probably is portrayed to our young people at the moment.
This episode is proudly supported by the Busy School. Educators know better than anyone there's no one size fits all when it comes to learning, and for some young people, the right environment can make all the difference. The Busy School supports Year 11 and 12 students who have disengaged from mainstream education, smaller classes, individual support, practical learning, and real pathways to work or further study. There are no fees, with uniforms, supplies, and meals included. That helps remove barriers so students can focus on building confidence, reconnecting with learning, and taking their next step. The Busy School is part of the Busy Group, a not-for-profit with almost 50 years experience supporting people through education, employment, and training. Find a campus near you at busyschools.qld.edu.au. It's that instant success or that the false appearance because you see so many of these influencers, they're renting houses on the weekend to do their shoots with money that they can't afford or credit cards and all of a sudden it all comes tumbling down. And I've read just recently the statistics on what you actually need to post, how often you need to post, how often you need to be
Huge.
putting out content. And the ones who are successful and who are doing really well at it, like they're working harder than most people.
Yeah.
They are on the graft like constantly because I mean, they love it. And so they do it, but it's not just picking up a camera and going, hey, look at what I'm wearing. It's, chasing the leads, learning how to edit, it's learning how to speak, it's learning, and so
Is this the tattoo teacher in 5 years' time? Is this where, posting 50?
Look, hey, who knows? Who knows where we'll go? But look, and look, one of the reasons I did this is because I love the conversation. And it is hard work for me. Like I could quite easily give it up, like, and get an hour, get a couple of hours back every single week. But I would miss out on the richness of the conversation, of making the connections. But also, more importantly for me, it's about getting some positivity out into a very saturated negative environment, especially
Say negative
in the
environment.
world of education.
Why is that?
I think the media loves an easy beat up on education.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at what's happening with the state education system. I mean, Victoria just had a huge win for their teachers union, and rightly so. Queensland are in that battle at the moment. New South Wales had one a little while ago, and they managed to lift the conditions for teachers. And look, teachers are like any profession. We go to university for 4 years. We have to study. We have to learn. We have to do all these things. And so many people who actually throw shade on education are ones who are educated very thoroughly. And so it's like there's this weird crossover of education's bad, but they wouldn't be in the position they're in without some education. So, you know, that's a conversation for a high level psychiatrist, I think, to
Right,
work
yeah.
out. But yeah, I think that it's education's an easy target to pin things on because everyone goes through school. So
Yeah.
obviously, if they're not coming out from successful from schooling, obviously there's something wrong with the system. Look, the system does need changing without a doubt.
Isn't
But
there
I
some
see.
and isn't and you might know this better than me, the stats around successful education outcomes are primarily driven by parenting and social groups, aren't they? As opposed to the school. That
Oh,
if
it wouldn't surprise me. That it's critical for parent support. Absolutely critical. For parent support for their child to be successful, but also to place value on, hey, you're at school for a reason. You need to respect your teachers. You need to listen. You need to follow instruction. And so it's that whole learning how to be a valuable member of the community. Not just get a QCE or whatever it might be. Speaking of all of those things, and bring in education, and we've talked about how important trades are, but a big thing that's pushing, we've had our I'm going to say it wrong, but the agricultural evolution. We've had the technical revolution, and now we're at the AI, the industrial revolution. Now we're at the technological revolution. How do you see that impacting what you do or what Busy does?
Yeah, we had our board meeting today, funny enough, and this literally was part of the conversation. I mean, I sort of covered some of this in the TED talk, that people miss in many ways humans have gone through these great evolutions. We went through the agricultural revolution where we were nomadic, and that went thousands of years. Then the revolution, of course, we really did create the system that we work out around employment, um, and income and bills and all this stuff. And so, of course, we're about to go through the AI revolution. And I think the AI revolution, of course, the changes to how we live as humans will be exponential compared to, particularly, obviously, the agricultural revolution, but even the industrial revolutions over a few years. The AI revolution is going to change how we live exponentially very quickly. But I think no one really can predict what that looks like. And I think anyone that pretends they can is absolutely faking it. You've obviously got, big tech gurus that are sort of running this huge field because it's, directly related to how much money they make. But I think there's probably a more realistic, there's the two ends of the spectrum, isn't there, which is either we'll be surrounded by humanoid robots in 20 years and we'll all be, having nothing to do, or we go the way that technology has always gone, which is it's improved productivity and efficiency. And it means that when I'm writing my board reports like today, I could put them through, Copilot and check that everything's correct and I can improve it. I just become more efficient. So, there's those two things that we actually, because we become more productive, we actually become more busy and we actually create more jobs. That's the one end of AI. And of course, the other end of AI is kind of that dead end thing that people are hearing a lot in the media. And I actually don't think we really know yet. And it's going to be the next 5 or 10 years. I think it's a case of being a little bit measured and sensible about some of this thinking. Um, that the end of the world will not nigh, but it is changing, and that change is exponential. There's some very easy things to identify within that that do relate directly to what we do, particularly in education, and that is this loss of entry level pathways. You know, the first
Yes.
job that are going to hit by AI are going to be those pathways into administration and base level, the lower levels, white collar works. Um, so there's going to be a lot of work that goes, which are pathways that kids from our schools, particularly busy schools, would ordinarily go into, and also from a busy perspective, we have a whole range of employability programs, and I'm deeply concerned about a lot of those entry level pathways are the ones that can be most hit across all of our programs. So where we have to currently get a job seeker or student from here to get into employment, we might now need to get it from here to get them more ready for employment, which requires a lot more resources, a lot more wraparound supports, and a lot more identification of how they can utilize those strengths to develop a career. So, look, I think the AI revolution, I haven't quite landed personally on how huge it's going to be, other than it will be exponential. And I haven't really landed on will it enable human flourishing? That's what I talk about in my TED talk. I'm more leaning towards that, rather than the Armageddon approach. I think there's real opportunity for humans to go back to being creative, to do all those things that technology can do, the very human skills around creativity, wisdom, judgment. I think there's a real opportunity to do that. And actually, we can flourish as humans in the AI world where we go back to this pre-industrial revolution type way of living. But in the minimum, I think what we can predict is disruption to entry level pathways. And for those of us in this space, we need to tackle that quite urgently.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. Whereas, yeah, those entry level positions, which were considered stable, safe, secure jobs, are disappearing very quickly. The jobs that were before it really boomed, the jobs that were touted to go with the next technological revolution were all the blue collar, all the all this sort of stuff. But they are the ones that seem to be growing, are more secure, have more potential for growth. And you talked about efficiency, and I think back to when robots were first coming into the industrial facilities. We were one of the jobs, one of where I did my apprenticeship is we were building specialized machinery. The customer would come to us and go, "Hey, we want to be able to do this," and so we were. Yes, someone was losing their job in that sense, but the efficiency and the productivity for what we were doing as skilled workers, um, and the creative thinking that was required by our lead designers, our boss, was just phenomenal, and which couldn't be done because the only way they could do it was through the experience that they had. So they had that skill to be able to go, yeah, that's not going to work. This is going to work. And so I think that even you go, well, you look back to the guy who used to put the tires on the cars. His job was lost, but the level of production just went through the roof because there was someone who was willing to go, "Hey, I'm going to learn how to control that, or I'm going to learn how to program, or I'm going to learn how to." And so they've moved from what they know into how can I make what I know better, and how can I make it more efficient, and how can I make it safer. So yeah, we're not going to know anything for another few years, but
That's
I think
I love that example. You sort of, that Fordism that was created, back in the 20s, whenever it was, that then got replaced by, automation. Actually, people were terrified of losing their jobs. And there were absolutely places like Geelong in Australia, or north of England where, Dagenham in the south of England, where huge numbers of jobs were lost. Yet unemployment rates in both the UK and Australia are still lower now than they were then. So we do create other work despite these terrible things that do happen in the short term. I always think of stories of somebody I know that, was a secretary in the 1970s, and they would go on protest because of the invention of word processors, because word processors would take all the jobs. But of course, it just made, yes, there were less people working in that, but there's a whole range of other work created because of that. And I think potentially the opportunity is that we will, a lot of those jobs working on the factory floor and working in those typing pools, they weren't creative. They weren't designed for the human spirit. So the opportunity now with AI is to get us back to work that really is about human flourishing, about the human spirit. So I'm hoping that's the way this goes. It is, of course, all to be seen, but the more productive we become, the more work we actually create.
yeah, and I'm like you as well. I have the optimistic approach that the human spirit will. There's far more good than there is bad And there's far more humanness in this world than there is anti, you know, anti-human. The ability to form relationships and communicate, and on a deeper level, with all these efficiencies that we are getting, it's helping us do that. It's helping us become more human. I mean, like with efficiencies, being as an accountant, you know, there shouldn't be
I
any
tried nine
accountants.
now already. Yeah,
Yeah, there shouldn't be any accountants because Lotus came out. Then, uh,
my old and Oracle and Sage and all these things. Yeah,
yeah, but all it just made there's more accountants now than there ever was,
yeah.
but they're more efficient and they can help
You
and they
know,
can be
I
creative
work
in their
with
thinking.
a lot of CEOs, and different CEOs have different skill sets. You are still going to need, even if AI can produce all this stuff magically, AI still can't interpret it as well as somebody sitting down and explaining the numbers to the CEO or to the board. You still need all that stuff. You still really need, I was analyzing some financials today, and we're not at that point where you can't just rely entirely on AI. You actually do need a credible amount of interpretation, and that's where the opportunity is for us. And we produce these things quicker, but it's the interpretation and putting that human element across it. And I sort of want to come back to the point that I was making earlier on. Again, it was something I talked about in the TED talk, and something I've talked about on my own podcast. Is I have a view that in a few hundred years, we look at different periods of time, and when you're in that period of time, you can't really see out of it. Well, we are in this like post-industrial revolution period of time as humans in human species. We will look back at this period where people worked in factories and they were doing the same thing every day for 12 hours a day, and they worked in offices. That is not what we're designed to do. We are designed to be outside. We're designed to be creative. We're designed to be social. And so I'm really hopeful that the life for us post the industrial revolution is far more exciting than it has been for the last 250, 300 years. And education is going to get disrupted because of that. Education will get disrupted massively, and teachers will have to adapt to the fact that, you know, we might not be teaching in classrooms the way we used to. Teaching might become something where, you have hubs of children coming and AI could be doing the teaching, but you'll still need teachers to kind of do the support, the direction, the behavior, that sort of thing. And it will affect every industry. But I think overall, the human experience will improve. It's just
Yeah.
adapting hard to.
Yeah, it's being adaptable, going, "Oh, okay, I've got to be." It's and that's that growth mindset that we need to go. Okay, decision, change, alter, come at it, look at a different perspective. Empathy, all that sort of stuff is that's what we need to bring in. Speaking of human connections, and looking at empathy and how the human nature will flourish or can hopefully flourish even more so, is you also are very much in the not for profit space, which is all about helping your fellow man. It's about, giving someone not a hand out, but a hand up is one of the cliche remarks, but it's so true. And it's what you do, and it's what the busy group does with these kids every day. It gives them a hand up. So how did you get involved in that, or what's the drive behind the not for profit space?
Yeah, look, it is a bit of a passion of mine. The whole Busy Group is a not-for-profit organization, and nobody gets rich out of Busy. The money is all put into making the world a better place, or as my UK MD Reese, doing good shit, and that's what we exist for. We want to do good shit for people through education, skills, and employment. So the profits or surpluses that we do make, they go back into funding more schools, and more recently, we've just launched the Busy Foundation, which is about we identified actually in the big cyclone here in southeast Queensland last year, whose name I can't remember now. My
Yeah,
God,
I don't want to remember it.
no, Albert? No, I can't remember. Anyway, we identified we had lots of kids that coming into that cyclone and didn't have anywhere to stay. So we are putting a lot of money now into youth homelessness as well as through our foundation. But it's a bit of a passion of mine that I think the not-for-profit world can do so much more to make the world a better place. And I think what we're trying to do at Busy is I like to think we're different. All companies do, but we are trying to be the highly commercial, highly entrepreneurial. So we are there. We are running government programs, we're delivering employability programs. We run the ADF transition program, all sorts of skills programs, scholarship programs we do with governments around the world. But we want to be as entrepreneurial, as commercial as the big for profits. But those surpluses that we make, and we're not scared of saying we make surpluses. The surpluses we make, we then put into not for profits, creating these great schools, but meaning young people are not homeless, they're not unemployed, they're not uneducated. It's a bit of a passion of mine that you can run profits and you could be as good as and better than for profits. And instead of, God, I sound like a crazy socialist right now, don't I? You can take those profits and make the world a better place. And that's who Disney is. That's who we are. I like more.
Yeah, and look, over the years, I've been involved with some not for profit for with the charities who reinvest all their profits because they're like, hey, we're actually a not for profit charity, but we're all about making money so we can help more people,
Yeah.
so that we can actually do more. There's never going to be enough money to do what we want to do. So they drive that, and I mean the fact they're busy, globally now, is gives out food and uniforms and no fees is phenomenal, especially in this day and age.
It's that commercial piece, mate. In all honesty, the funding is there. If we can maximize use of that funding, it means that again, when you come from different places, one of the things that's really interesting about Australia that has become part of the Australian mindset that we often miss is how much parents spend on school, even state provision school. It blows my mind that parents in Australia have to pay to send their kids to state school through these school levies. The amount, schools are changing uniforms in Australia as often as Premier League football teams, so that kids have to buy the uniform every year, and that money, of course, goes to schools. Schools don't need to do that. If they are run really effectively, and this is not a teaching issue, this is an administration issue.
Yeah,
Schools
absolutely.
enough to not have to charge for this stuff. And it is a bit of a passion in mine that we really try to stretch the funding so that we don't have to charge parents, so that we can make sure that everything is available for children, from food to travel costs to uniforms. But yeah, it's just really a case of make sure we map that money very carefully so that we can do this.
Yeah, so from that, we're just, I've got 1,000 more questions that I want to ask you, but time doesn't permit. But the last one that I do want to ask you in relation to our conversation is, with all of what we've talked about with government funding, with grants, with skills shortages, what's the biggest, or what's the most important urgent shift that you see that Australian might need to make in the education space? Like, what would you, if you had the magic wand, what would you love to do within Australia for the these young men and women who are moving through this system?
The world is changing at a huge pace. We are changing, and attitudes towards education is changing. The, the boomer generation that sent us to school, where you had to go to school every day and you had to attend no matter what. And, people are a lot more relaxed about education now. And I think COVID and there's been a real change of attitude towards education, and parents want different things now. Parents want options. Parents want to do distance education, online education. They want to send their kids to flexible schools. They want to know that there's an outcome to that. They want, you see the growth in these industry schools. They want to know that their child not only will get an education, but there's an outcome to that. So I think it's actually the big change is going to be this ongoing increase in flexible models, in different models, so the parents have more and more choice as to where they can send their kids on a strategy. I'm in no doubt that at some point in the next few years, we'll go, oh my God, we need to go back to the way it was because, we need to save money, that sort of thing, because there is that fear of change. But, it is an incoming tide. People want to adapt education to fit with this new world, not just AI, but attitudes towards education, attitudes towards flexibility, attitudes towards the fact that we want to live improved lives. So I think the biggest thing that schools can do is prepare themselves for that adjustment to more localized hubs, smaller schools, smaller classrooms, more individualized learning, um, prepare themselves for change. Because I think education is going to be one of the most disrupted spaces in the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah, we can already see the disruption coming in, and schools like the busy school, and there's numerous other trade schools and alternate education for disengaged youth, that seem to be on the uptick. Like, people are going, why am I spending all this money here when I can go to this school and my child is going to get to that, and they're popping up everywhere, and we're looking at, and these people like yourself and your board, are going, how do we help these young people who just need a leg up? That's all they need. And I mean, I wish these schools were around when I was a kid, because I think I would have got to wherever I was going to go, maybe just that little bit quicker, or I
Yeah.
would have just a just that different viewpoint on what success can be and how it can be achieved in a marked and measured way, and not compared against anyone, but how do I achieve success? And I think that's critical for young men and women these days.
Yeah, 100%, mate. It really is. And look, people are after all sorts of models. We get people, because you have to be referred to our schools and be disengaged in some ways. But, we get parents approaching us saying, look, I want to send my child to your school. It's like, well, actually, they're doing great at school. They're not, they're not really able to come to our school. And we're also hearing from parents, can they do the busy school and go on holiday for 3 months? And again, no. So they want to have their child be educated whilst they're touring Australia or going on overseas holiday. So we are seeing people wanting more and more flexibility around education, which fits around flexibility of parenting lives as well. So mate, change is coming. And, we want to be at the forefront of that at Busy, but the education more broadly has to prepare itself for change.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Paul, mate, we've almost ticked over an hour already, which has been amazing. I love these rich conversations. This is one of the reasons why I do it. And I just want to wrap up with just a couple of questions just to wrap this amazing conversation in a bow. First one being is now we met through the TED Talk just by happenstance, which is fantastic. But if people wanted to reach out, they wanted to find more about Busy Group, the Busy School, the other arms that are there, or maybe even want to get involved and help support you. What are some of the ways that they could reach out to you or to Busy?
Like I know it sounds odd, but we do have a range of websites for our schools and for our broader business. So absolutely Google us. The 13 Busy number, 132879 is on there, and of course all of our contacts. If you want to approach me personally, the best way is on LinkedIn Messenger. But in all honesty, I sometimes take a bit of time to respond. But I do eventually read my LinkedIn messages. But there's traditional ways via the website, but feel free to message directly and I can point you in the right direction. But apologies if it just takes me a little bit of time.
That's right. I'll throw all those links in the show notes as well. Second to last question: if there was something that you could put out to people who are listening, like a challenge, just a statement of hey, how can they, what could they do, or how could they improve, or whatever it might be, just a challenge for people who are listening.
I think we're in a really interesting time, not just in Australia, but globally. We are seeing the final end of the Second World War, where we are moving globally to this new dynamic, and particularly around the US. And I think we're seeing this huge cost of living crisis. And I think, social media. I think there's a lot of anxiety about the future, a lot of anxiety about where the world is at the moment. I think my major thing around education is to be a lot more hopeful than probably a lot of people are being, and the fact that we can return as a species to a far more creative, flourishing time for us all if we make this transition correctly, and don't get bogged down in social media that tells you the end of the world is nigh around AI, because the opportunity to make the world a better place is absolutely there.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a great one. Like let's look for the best in human, and let's make this place better for our next generation. 100%. And finally, Paul, it wouldn't be the Tattoo Teacher podcast if I didn't ask you, do you have any tattoos?
Oh,
You don't have to show them. You don't have to explain them, but just do you have any tattoos?
I have two tattoos. I'll tell you what. One of them is a Welsh phrase that my partner and I both have. That we share, and the other one is how do I say this? I would have been very young, a scuba diving instructor, and I thought it was cool at the time in Byron Bay 30 years ago. And as a 51-year-old man, it's not cool.
Yeah, we'll leave it. We'll leave that one there
Thank
for
you. Thank
sure.
you.
Yeah, but Paul, thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate it. I thank you for what Busy is doing for the young men and women, not only on the Gold Coast but now Auckland, Canada, and Great Britain, and just for all the people that you bring together to help humans flourish to their level of to their next level of success, whatever that may look like.
I'm not, mate. Thanks for having me on here. We are. It's not me. There's a most incredible board, founder, chair, and then teachers, leaders, counselors, employment staff, apprenticeship. There's nearly 1,500 people at Busy that just are so passionate about what we do and want to make the world a better place. So thank you for letting me share a bit about who we are, what we do, and what we want to keep doing what we do. And by all means, check us out online. And if you want to get involved, that's where we are.
Excellent. Yeah, like I said earlier, I'll put all those links in the show notes. But thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate it. And you have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, mate. You too. Take care. See ya.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for listening to the Tattoo Teacher podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful. If you like what you heard, it would mean so much to me if you could either like, follow, and subscribe to whatever platform you are listening on. The music was by DJ Fruit Salad. Thanks again for listening. Stay cool. Be blessed.